Prepare to uncover the chilling and mysterious tale of Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor who authorized the crucifixion of Jesus. What happened to him after this fateful decision is shrouded in both historical intrigue and theological debate. Stay with us until the end for a powerful prayer reflecting on justice, mercy, and redemption. When Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but that rather a tumult was made, he took water, and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. See you to it. Matthew chapter 27 verse 24. Imagine, if you will, the fabled dust of ancient Jerusalem being unsettled by a day that would alter the course of history forever. In the grand court of Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea, an interaction took place that has been recorded with both reverence and trepidation in the scriptures. The Gospel of Matthew, chapter 27, verses 11 to 26, lifts the veil on this solemn courtroom. Here, we witness Pilate's fateful encounter with Jesus, a man brought to him under the weight of accusations and expectation. Are you the king of the Jews? Pilate's voice echoes through the chamber, his eyes searching for truth in the gaze of this humble yet regal figure before him. Jesus' response, a mere acknowledgement, "You have said so," hangs in the air like a prophetic whisper, neither defiant nor cowed. Pilate is ensnared in a web of voices, drowning in the demands of the chief priests and elders who clamor for a sentence of death. They accuse Jesus of many things, yet he remains silent, an enigma of tranquil sovereignty amidst the storm. Pilate, a seasoned judge, marvels at this composure. Do you not hear the many charges they bring against you? But Jesus offers no retort, as if the words of his accusers are but a distant murmur against the tide of destiny. The narrative unfolds with Pilate seeking an exit from this moral labyrinth. It is customary during the feast to release a prisoner to the crowd, an act of clemency that placates the masses. Before them stands a choice: Barabbas, a notorious criminal, or Jesus, called Christ. Whom do you want me to release to you? Pilate's plea seeks resolution. The crowd, swayed by the chief priests, clamors for Barabbas. Then what shall I do with Jesus who is called Christ? He questions with rising desperation. Crucify him. The roar of the multitude demands. Pilate is caught in the crucible of decision, the scales of justice and public appeasement tipping precariously. He seeks absolution in a symbolic act, washing his hands before the crowd. I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves. And with this gesture, he capitulates, delivering Jesus to be scourged and crucified, a choice underscored by the thunderous roar of crowd consensus. The account in John's Gospel, chapter 19, verses 1 to 16, provides a poignant lens into the exchange between Pilate and the Jewish leaders. Here, the drama intensifies as Pilate grapples with the warring forces of authority and morality. Jesus, subjected to a brutal flogging, is presented again before Pilate, clad mockingly in a purple robe and crowned with thorns. Behold the man! Pilate declares, perhaps hoping the sight will satiate the bloodlust of the accusers. Yet, the chief priests and officers chant their unyielding demand, "Crucify him, crucify him." Pilate retorts with frustration and incredulity, "Take him yourselves and crucify him, for I find no guilt in him." The tension crescendos as the Jewish leaders wield the law as their weapon, asserting, "We have a law, and according to that law he ought to die because he has made himself the Son of God." Pilate's fear deepens. He returns to interrogate Jesus, a man now revealed not merely as a political prisoner but potentially a divine being. "Where are you from?" Pilate inquires, seeking comprehension beyond the earthly pretense. Jesus' quiet refusal to answer propels Pilate into an existential quandary. "Do you not know that I have authority to release you and authority to crucify you?" he demands, but Jesus' words turn the tide of presumed power. "You would have no authority over me at all unless it had been given you from above." The die is cast. Pilate attempts once more to release Jesus, yet the crowd's cry spirals to a threatening crescendo. "If you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend." Everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar. The political implications strike a mortal blow to Pilate's resolve. He ascends the judgment seat at Gabbatha, his verdict intertwined with political survival and public order. "Behold your king." He presents Jesus one final time, but the response is merciless. Away with him, crucify him." In the end, Pilate's voice quivers with the gravity of history as he capitulates. "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests, shunning their divine heritage, proclaim allegiance to Caesar. "We have no king but Caesar." Thus, Pilate surrenders Jesus to be crucified, an act etched with the stark juxtaposition of human frailty and divine foreordination. These biblical passages unfold Pilate's internal conflict, a tableau of worldly power grappling with divine destiny. Pilate, ensnared between the dictates of imperial Rome and the inscrutable purpose of the ages, ultimately concedes to crucify Jesus, sealing his role in the tragic and redemptive narrative that would echo through millennia. In the grand tapestry of the Gospels, Pontius Pilate emerges as a character of immense complexity, emblematic of the age-old struggle between worldly authority and moral truth. To the casual observer, Pilate may appear but a footnote in the grand narrative of the Passion, yet his role is pivotal, laden with layers of the human condition itself. When the Gospel writers lay their quills to parchment, they do so with a keen eye on Pilate's tangled web of justifications and inner turmoil. We see him, first and foremost, as a politician, a man of Rome, bound irreversibly to the demands of empire and duty. In this light, Pilate's initial interrogation of Jesus mirrors the routine pragmatism of governance. "Are you the king of the Jews?" he inquires, searching for the seeds of insurrection that could beckon the ire of Caesar. Yet, within these words, there is a flicker of something deeper, a search, perhaps, for the ineffable clarity of truth. As the narratives unfold, we see a governor who is not wholly immune to the gravity of the moment. Pilate's famous exclamation, "What is truth?" is not merely rhetorical. It is the cry of a soul caught between the machinations of political survival and the dawning recognition of an otherworldly innocence in the man before him. In the dialogue with the Jewish leaders, Pilate embodies the archetypal struggle of conscience versus conformity. The Gospels of Matthew and Mark recount Pilate's attempts to sway the crowd towards clemency, offering them the notorious Barabbas instead. It is a gambit that exposes his moral hesitancy, an attempt to uphold justice without defying the volatile will of the masses. When the crowd insists, clamoring for the crucifixion of Jesus, Pilate relinquishes his resolve, ceremoniously washing his hands in a poignant, yet ultimately futile gesture of declared innocence. And so, Pilate's character is painted with the broad strokes of paradox. He is the governor who knows the right, yet forsakes it, a man who yearns for justice but bows to expedience. His ultimate order for crucifixion, sealed by a mixture of political fear and reluctant submission, etches him into the annals of history not merely as a villain, but as a tragic figure, one whose moral conflict reverberates through the ages. This multifaceted portrayal forces us to wrestle with the very essence of human weakness and governance. Pilate's story is not simply a tale of condemnation. It is a mirror reflecting our own struggles with truth and duty, with the anguish of moral compromise. The Gospel's nuanced depiction beckons us to ponder deeply, not just upon the historical figure of Pilate, but upon the universal frailties that his narrative so vividly illuminates. Pontius Pilate, a name forever intertwined with one of history's most consequential trials, served as the Roman governor of Judea during a tumultuous period in the early 1st century. His tenure as prefect, from around AD 26 to 36, placed him at the intersection of Roman imperial interests and a volatile provincial population. To fully grasp the weight of Pilate's decisions, one must first understand the nature of his role and the environment in which he operated. Pilate was not a king, but rather a prefect or procurator, appointed by the emperor to oversee a region deemed important yet difficult to govern. Judea was a land filled with religious fervor, social unrest, and diverse communities often at odds with one another. The Roman Empire, vast and sprawling, relied on appointed officials like Pilate to maintain order, collect taxes, and implement the emperor's decrees. The governor's powers were considerable, including judicial authority over life and death, but they were tethered to the will of the emperor and the efficiency of continental governance. Pilate's mandate was to keep the peace and to ensure a steady flow of tribute from Judea to Rome. Pilate inherited a province that had been a source of consistent trouble for the empire. The Jewish population, fiercely devout, often resisted Roman practices that infringed upon their religious laws. Pilate's predecessors had faced revolts and riots, and he was keenly aware that his own fate could be jeopardized by similar unrest. The political pressures bearing down on Pilate were immense. He needed to placate the local Jewish authorities, including the Sanhedrin, while not appearing weak to the Roman leadership. His reign began with a series of missteps that would later haunt him. According to historical accounts, Pilate introduced Roman standards bearing the emperor's image into Jerusalem, a move seen as blasphemous by the Jewish populace. The resulting outcry forced him to remove the standards, an early indication of his complex and often fraught relationship with his subjects. Pilate's governance was marked by further confrontations. He redirected funds from the temple treasury to build an aqueduct, spurring protests and, according to some sources, a violent crackdown on dissenters. These incidents illustrate Pilate's attempts to assert Roman authority while also trying to implement public works that, in his view, would benefit the province. His predicament can be likened to a man walking a tightrope, with every step laden with potential peril. Pilate's authority was not absolute. He was accountable to the Emperor Tiberius, a ruler who expected stability from his appointees. Any significant unrest in Judea could be interpreted as a failure on Pilate's part to manage the province effectively. During this period, the figure of Jesus of Nazareth emerged as a significant and controversial presence. To the Roman authorities, Jesus was a potential agitator, a man whose growing following could incite rebellion. To the Jewish leaders, he was seen as a blasphemer threatening the established religious order. Pilate found himself wedged between these two groups, each with its demands and expectations. When Jesus was brought before Pilate, the governor faced an excruciating decision. Crucifixion was a common Roman punishment for insurrectionists, yet Pilate seemed reluctant to sentence a man he viewed as innocent of a crime warranting such a death. His wife, historically named Procula, also reportedly warned him of a troubling dream about Jesus, suggesting divine displeasure with the proceedings. However, the pressure from the Jewish authorities and the crowd persuaded Pilate to capitulate. He famously washed his hands before the multitude, symbolically distancing himself from the responsibility of Jesus' death. This act of washing hands has since entered the lexicon as a metaphor for evading responsibility. Thus, Pilate's governance and his involvement in the crucifixion of Jesus must be viewed within the broader context of Roman provincial administration and the intense difficulties inherent in ruling a restive and devout population. His story is a testament to the complex interplay of power, culture, and individual conscience within the vast machinery of the Roman Empire. In the grand narrative of the Gospels, few moments carry the weighty solemnity as the interactions between Pontius Pilate, Jesus of Nazareth, and the Jewish leaders. As the Roman governor of Judea, Pilate found himself in an excruciating situation, balancing political expedience with an uneasy moral quandary. His swift, tense exchanges with these significant biblical figures have left indelible impressions on history, theology, and the hearts of believers. First, let us consider Pilate's interaction with Jesus. From the onset, Pilate faced the perplexing reality of a man accused of claiming kingship, yet presenting neither defiance nor fear. Jesus, often portrayed with an aura of tranquil sovereignty, stood before the Roman governor with poised stillness. In John chapter 18 verses 33 to 37, Pilate asked, "Are you the king of the Jews?" To which Jesus responded, "My kingdom is not of this world." Pilate's subsequent question, "What is truth?" reveals a man caught in the murky waters of political pragmatism and existential doubt. Here was a Roman, skeptical and cynical, confronted by a figure who spoke of a kingdom not bound by earthly paradigms. Throughout this encounter, Pilate oscillated between his role as a judge and the emerging sense that he was engaging with someone far beyond ordinary comprehension. Jesus' composed replies and the profound nature of his declarations about truth and kingdom were not easily dismissed by Pilate. Moving on to the Jewish leaders, particularly Caiaphas and Annas, their roles were indispensable in propelling Pilate toward his reluctant decision. Caiaphas, the high priest, was an astute and politically savvy figure, deeply entrenched in the socio-political fabric of Judea. Both he and Annas wielded considerable influence, orchestrating the charges against Jesus with calculated precision. They presented Jesus as a blasphemer and a threat to Roman order, a tactic designed to exploit Pilate's primary concern, maintaining peace and averting insurrection. Caiaphas had earlier remarked, "It is better for one man to die for the people than for the whole nation to perish," John chapter 11 verse 50. This pragmatic, albeit cold, rationale underscores their intent and highlights their manipulation of the legal machinery to ensure Jesus' death. Pilate's vacillation is further illuminated by his interactions with these influential leaders. In John chapter 19 verse 12, the pressure becomes explicit. "If you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend." Everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar. The Jewish leaders adroitly used Pilate's political fears against him, stressing the potential for a charge of disloyalty to the emperor. In an unstable imperial system, the accusation of allowing a rival king could spell the end of Pilate's career, or worse, his life. The scene was fraught with tension as Pilate attempted to placate the crowd by offering to release Jesus as part of the Passover custom, yet their cries for Barabbas, a known insurgent, only sealed the grim fate. Herein lies the tragic irony. Pilate, awash in the politics of fear and self-preservation, succumbed to the very pressures he initially sought to navigate. The voices of Caiaphas and the relentless multitude eclipsed his private misgivings, leading him to infamously wash his hands before the assembly, proclaiming, "I am innocent of this man's blood." Matthew chapter 27 verse 24. Caiaphas and Annas personify the complex intertwining of religious authority and political maneuvering. Their relentless pursuit of Jesus' execution was not merely a religious mission but a strategic move to safeguard their position and the tenuous peace under Roman rule. This intersection of religious fervor and political expediency casts a sobering light on the trial of Jesus and Pilate's reluctant acquiescence. As we dissect these interactions, it behooves us to comprehend the disparate motives and pressures converging upon Pilate. His role as the adjudicator of Jesus' fate was marred by a confluence of political trepidation, religious manipulation, and personal ambivalence. In this regard, Pilate becomes a tragic figure, a man who, in his attempt to remain impervious to the currents around him, was ultimately swept away by them. Thus, the complex interplay between Pilate, Jesus, and the Jewish leaders imparts timeless lessons on justice, authority, and the perils of moral compromise. It is a poignant reminder that individuals wielding power, whether religious or political, often grapple with profound ethical dilemmas, the ramifications of which can echo down through the corridors of history and the annals of faith. When we consider the decision of Pontius Pilate to crucify Jesus, we enter a profound labyrinth of theological concepts. At the heart of this decision lies the intricate interplay between justice, guilt, and redemption. Each of these themes not only shapes our understanding of Pilate's actions but also invites deeper reflection on the human condition and divine providence. Let us begin by examining justice as it pertains to Pilate's role. Justice, in its most fundamental sense, demands fairness and the upholding of what is right. Pilate, as the Roman governor, was tasked with administering justice within Judea, a province rife with political instability and religious tension. The Gospels paint Pilate as a figure caught between his duty to maintain order and his recognition of Jesus' innocence. As we read in Matthew and John, Pilate's internal conflict is palpable. On the one hand, he finds no fault in Jesus, John chapter 19 verse 4, and on the other hand, he faces an escalating pressure from the Jewish leaders and the crowd. Pilate's ultimate decision to wash his hands of Jesus' fate, Matthew chapter 27 verse 24, symbolizes his attempt to absolve himself of responsibility, yet in doing so, he fails to uphold true justice. This brings us to a critical reflection. In seeking to sidestep responsibility, Pilate inadvertently becomes a vessel through which an unjust act is carried out. Moving to guilt, we see how this concept intertwines with the theme of justice and Pilate's personal moral quagmire. Guilt, in theology, is often understood not only as the sense of having committed a wrong but also as the state of being accountable for one's actions. Pilate's gesture of washing his hands can be seen as an attempt to dissociate from this guilt, yet it is emblematic of the very human tendency to shirk responsibility when facing moral dilemmas. Despite Pilate's efforts, history and theology have often placed the mantle of guilt upon him. By consenting to the demands of the crowd and sanctioning the crucifixion, Pilate participates in the narrative of human frailty and the ease with which justice can be subverted by fear and convenience. Theologically, this underscores the concept of corporate guilt, where multiple actors share in the culpability of a collective sin, emphasizing how individual actions contribute to broader consequences. Finally, the theme of redemption emerges as one of the most profound aspects of Pilate's narrative. Redemption, in Christian theology, refers to the act of being saved from sin, a deliverance that is made possible through Jesus' sacrificial death on the cross. The paradox here is poignant. Pilate's decision, rooted in failure and compromise, becomes instrumental in the fulfillment of divine redemption. Within various theological frameworks, this paradox is interpreted differently. Augustine, for example, might view Pilate's actions as part of God's sovereign plan, where even the failures of men serve a greater purpose. Pilate, in this sense, acts as an unwitting participant in the divine drama that leads to humanity's ultimate redemption through Christ. On the other hand, some theological interpretations might focus on Pilate's decision as a reflection of human free will and the painful consequences of moral compromise. Here, the story of Pilate becomes a cautionary tale about the necessity of courage and integrity in the pursuit of justice. In exploring these themes, we find that Pilate's story is not merely a historical footnote but a rich tapestry that invites ongoing contemplation. It highlights the enduring struggle between justice and expediency, the weight of guilt in our moral decisions, and the profound mystery of redemption that transforms even our deepest failures into opportunities for divine grace. Thus, as we reflect on Pilate's decision to crucify Jesus, we are called to examine our own lives in light of these theological concepts. We are reminded of the importance of upholding justice, confronting our guilt, and embracing the hope of redemption that lies at the heart of the Christian faith. In the grand tapestry of Christian thought, few figures are as polarizing and enigmatic as Pontius Pilate. To understand his significance, we must turn our gaze to two of Christianity's most influential theologians, Augustine of Hippo and John Calvin. Their interpretations diverge in fascinating ways, each offering profound insights into the principles of divine justice and human responsibility. Augustine, a towering figure of the early church, viewed Pilate through the lens of God's providence. With a mind deeply entrenched in the theology of grace, Augustine saw Pilate's actions not merely as a historical event, but as part of the divine drama of redemption. To Augustine, Pilate was a reluctant instrument in God's grand design, a pawn moved by an omnipotent hand. He suggested that Pilate, despite his personal failings, played a crucial role in the fulfillment of divine prophecy. This perspective aligns with Augustine's broader theological framework that emphasizes God's sovereignty and the predestined order. In his seminal work, The City of God, Augustine hints at the paradox of Pilate's choice, an act of free will that was simultaneously ordained by God for the greater good of humanity. John Calvin, the fiery reformer of the 16th century, offered a more austere interpretation. Steeped in the doctrines of predestination and total depravity, Calvin perceived Pilate as a tragic figure ensnared by his own moral cowardice. In his Institutes of the Christian Religion, Calvin scrutinized Pilate's vacillation and ultimate concession to public pressure. For Calvin, Pilate's failure was emblematic of humanity's universal sinfulness and the desperate need for divine grace. Calvin postulated that Pilate's attempt to absolve himself of guilt by washing his hands was a hollow ritual, insufficient to cleanse his conscience. This act underscored the futility of human efforts to attain righteousness without divine intervention. Through Pilate, Calvin illustrated the inexorable reality of human weakness against the backdrop of God's immutable justice. Both Augustine and Calvin, despite their differing viewpoints, underscore the intricate balance between divine ordination and human agency. Augustine's lens focuses on the overarching narrative of redemption, where every character, including Pilate, plays a divinely appointed role. Calvin, on the other hand, accentuates the moral implications of Pilate's actions, framing them within the context of human fallibility and God's redeeming grace. Through their interpretations, we are invited to reflect on the profound mystery of God's justice, a justice that is at once transcendent and immanent, merciful and exacting. These theological giants compel us to confront the uncomfortable tension between free will and predestination. Pilate's story, as seen through their eyes, becomes a mirror reflecting our own struggles with moral decisions and the search for redemption. It is a narrative that resonates across the ages, urging believers to grapple with the complexities of faith and the demands of divine justice. In contemplating Augustine and Calvin's insights, we are reminded that every human action, even those mired in ambiguity and frailty, is enveloped within the boundless grace and sovereign will of God. As we traverse the annals of history and theological reflection, it becomes apparent that Pontius Pilate occupies a controversial and fascinating position. The traditional views of Pilate paint him as a figure enveloped in moral weakness and culpability, a man caught in the tide of events that were beyond his moral compass. Biblical narratives provide ample support for this assessment. In the Gospel of Matthew, Pilate famously washes his hands before the multitude, declaring, "I am innocent of the blood of this just person. See you to it." This act, however, is not depicted as one of genuine innocence but rather an attempt to absolve himself from responsibility while still capitulating to the demands of the crowd. Early Christian writings further condemn Pilate's actions. Influential church fathers such as Tertullian and Origen criticized Pilate's cowardice and his willingness to submit to popular pressure rather than uphold justice. They argued that Pilate's decision to authorize the crucifixion was an act of grave moral failure, demonstrating a lack of integrity and strength of character. The narrative in the Gospel of John adds another layer to this portrayal. Pilate is depicted as oscillating between his hesitant belief in Jesus' innocence and his fear of inciting unrest among the Jewish leaders and populace. His ultimate choice to order the crucifixion, despite his repeated acknowledgments of Jesus' innocence, is seen as a testament to his moral frailty and political expediency. In essence, these traditional views cast Pilate as a tragic yet culpable figure, a man who had the power to do what was right but chose the path of least resistance. It is not merely his act of washing his hands that condemns him but the perceived insincerity and the ethical failure that it symbolizes. This portrayal has enduring implications. By seeing Pilate as weak and morally culpable, traditional views emphasize the importance of moral fortitude and the dangers of yielding to external pressures at the expense of justice and righteousness. In conclusion, traditional views provide a stark lesson through Pilate's story, that moral inaction in the face of injustice is, in itself, a grave wrong. To truly understand the depth of Pilate's failing, one must see it not just through the lens of historical events, but through the enduring moral questions it raises about justice, responsibility, and the human condition. Let us delve into a nuanced exploration of Pontius Pilate, a man who, for centuries, has borne the weight of history as the indifferent adjudicator presiding over the trial of Jesus. Traditional views often paint him as a weak and morally culpable figure, a man who succumbed to public pressure and washed his hands of the responsibility for a decision of vast, eternal consequence. However, modern historical and theological scholarship invites us to reconsider this portrayal and, perhaps, to empathize with Pilate as a tragic figure ensnared by the intractable currents of his time. Imagine, if you will, a man placed in a position of tremendous authority, yet facing pressures that seem utterly insurmountable. Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea, navigated a political landscape fraught with unrest and tension. The Jewish leaders had significant influence and the potential to stir up trouble, while the backdrop of Roman expectations loomed ever large. In this context, the trial of Jesus was not merely a local legal proceeding but a potential powder keg that could explode into broader conflict. Modern scholars suggest that Pilate's decision-making process was far more complex than mere cowardice or moral failure. Some argue that he was, in fact, a pragmatic ruler attempting to maintain order in a volatile province. When faced with the fanatic demands of the crowd, Pilate might have seen no viable option but to accede to their wishes, fearing the destabilization of the region and his own political downfall should unrest erupt. Pilate's famous act of washing his hands could thus be interpreted not simply as evasion but as a symbolic gesture reflecting his perception of an impossible dilemma. It is also crucial to recognize the role of historical context in shaping Pilate's actions. The Roman Empire was vast and diverse, necessitating a delicate balance of local autonomy and imperial control. Pilate, as a representative of Rome, had to enforce Roman law and order while managing local customs and religious sensitivities. His interactions with the Jewish leaders showcase this tightrope walk, where giving in to their demands may have been seen as a necessary evil to preserve larger-scale peace and stability. Theological interpretations have also evolved, employing empathy to paint a more intricate picture of Pilate's indecision. The interplay of divine providence and human agency becomes a profound point of reflection. Some perspectives suggest that Pilate's role, however reluctant, was instrumental in the unfolding of a divine plan greater than any single human decision. In this light, Pilate is portrayed not as a villain but as a tragic figure, compelled by forces beyond his understanding, a pawn in a divine drama. Moreover, Pilate's portrayal in later historical and artistic representations adds layers to our understanding. Playwrights, novelists, and artists have often revisited Pilate's story, imbuing him with a sense of internal conflict and tragic resignations. In these portrayals, Pilate is not merely a figure of villainy but a complex character caught in an ethical and existential quagmire, reflecting broader human themes of justice, responsibility, and the burden of decision-making. This more compassionate view of Pilate does not aim to absolve him of his actions. Instead, it seeks to understand the constraints and pressures he faced, acknowledging the multifaceted nature of historical figures. By recognizing Pilate as a tragic figure ensnared by inescapable circumstances, we allow for a richer, more empathetic engagement with his story. We are reminded that history is not merely a tapestry of black and white absolutes but a mosaic of gray areas and human struggles. As we reconsider Pilate's legacy, let us also reflect on the lessons his story offers to us today. The theme of moral compromise, under duress, transcends time and place, inviting us to consider how we might act in the face of our own ethical dilemmas. Pilate's story, when viewed through this lens, becomes a mirror reflecting our own capacity for both failure and grace, urging us to strive for integrity amidst the manifold pressures of life. In the grand tapestry of human history, the saga of Pontius Pilate stands as a poignant testament to the perils of moral compromise. From his pivotal role in the trial and crucifixion of Jesus, Pilate's narrative ebbs and flows with the currents of ethical quandary and political expediency. This tale, friends, is not confined to the annals of Christianity alone. Indeed, a keen observer might find striking parallels in the sacred stories of other traditions, each offering unique insights into the human condition. Consider, if you will, the figure of King Saul in the noble heritage of Judaism. Saul, the first king of Israel, embraces his destiny with a mixture of valor and vulnerability, much as Pilate does. Both men find themselves ensnared in webs of power and prophecy, where their actions ripple across the ages. Saul, anointed by the prophet Samuel, initially rises to power as a beacon of hope for Israel. Yet, as the shadows lengthen, his reign is marred by disobedience and spiritual disarray. Faced with the Philistine threat, Saul's decision to offer a sacrifice, one that only Samuel was ordained to perform, echoes with the same tragic disobedience that characterizes Pilate's fateful judgment. Saul, like Pilate, stands at a crossroads where divine mandate and personal ambition collide. His eventual downfall, highlighted by a desperate consultation with a medium, a forbidden act, mirrors Pilate's own resort to public hand-washing, a gesture both symbolic and hollow. In the end, Saul's story culminates in a battlefield death, a poignant reminder of the cost of moral compromise and the weight of leadership. His tale, much like that of Pilate, invites us to ponder the delicate balance between divine will and human agency, a theme that resonates deeply within the collective human psyche. Turning to yet another tradition, one can discern analogous figures within Islamic history. Yazid ibn Muawiyah, the second caliph of the Umayyad dynasty, faces a similarly harrowing dilemma. His decision to confront Hussein ibn Ali at the Battle of Karbala results in a profound schism within the Muslim community. As with Pilate, Yazid's actions are entwined with the complexities of political authority and spiritual integrity. Yazid, thrust into leadership, grapples with the burdens of governance and the legacy of his progenitors. His fateful choice to engage in battle against Hussein, who sought to uphold justice and righteousness, parallels Pilate's own encounter with Jesus, a figure representing an unyielding moral compass. The aftermath of Karbala, marked by sorrow and introspection, serves as a solemn testament to the enduring impact of such pivotal decisions. In these comparative tales, a unifying thread emerges: the struggle between maintaining power and heeding the call of a higher ethical standard. Pilate, Saul, and Yazid, each in their respective narratives, confront the stark reality of choice amid the swirling maelstrom of history. As we reflect upon these stories, let us consider the broader implications for our own lives. Are we not, in our own small ways, faced with similar dilemmas? Do we not, at times, stand at the crossroads of ethical decision and personal gain? The tales of Pilate, Saul, and Yazid beckon us to look inward, to seek the wisdom and courage to navigate the often murky waters of morality with grace and conviction. And so, dear listener, may we draw from these historical narratives a deeper understanding of justice, leadership, and the human spirit. May we find in their struggles a mirror to our own, and in their resolutions, however tragic, a beacon to guide our steps along the path of integrity. Though centuries have passed since the time our tale begins, buried under the sands of time, pieces of history have been unearthed that testify to the truth of Pontius Pilate's existence and rule. One of the most compelling discoveries is the Pilate stone, an artifact that sheds light on the shadowy corners of his life. Close your eyes, if you will, and picture the ancient city of Caesarea Maritima, a splendid port and the heart of Roman administration in Judea. It was here, in 1961, that Italian archaeologists made a remarkable finding. Among the ruins of a theater, there lay a limestone block inscribed with words that would echo through the annals of history: Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea. This so-called Pilate stone provided the first tangible evidence of Pilate's governorship and confirmed his historical presence in a manner that not even the most hardened skeptic could easily dismiss. Consider the significance of this stone, dear listener. Until its discovery, the character of Pilate was often viewed through the lens of Christian texts and historical conjecture, an almost spectral figure whose reality could easily be questioned. This stone, with its plain, unembellished Latin inscription, served as a solid link between the narrative of the Gospels and the reality of the Roman Empire, grounding Pilate's tale in the bedrock of history. Move forward with me now to another fragment of the past, not carved in stone but minted in metal. Coins bearing Pilate's inscription have been found, further corroborating his role as a Roman official. These humble pieces of currency, with their engravings of Roman deities and symbols, remind us that Pilate was not merely a bystander in a divine story but an active participant in the governance and daily life of Judea. His decisions would reverberate through the ages, impacting both the political landscape of his time and the theological tapestry woven by those who came after. Imagine holding one of these coins in your hand. Feel its weight and texture, an ordinary object that once passed through the hands of countless individuals, from tradesmen to tax collectors. Yet, within its worn edges lies a testament to an extraordinary story, linking the mundane with the monumental. These archaeological finds, both stone and coin, serve as bridges connecting us to a distant past, making the stories more tangible, more real. They compel us to acknowledge that the figures we read about in ancient texts breathed the same air, walked the same earth, and faced the same moral dilemmas that we ponder today. As you reflect on the historical evidence of Pilate's rule, let us not forget the broader implications. Such discoveries fortify our understanding of history, grounding our faith in a framework of authenticity and reinforcing the reality that the lessons from Pilate's life are not mere allegory but lived experience. They are vestiges of a world where power, responsibility, and fate intertwined at a critical juncture in human history. As we delve into the academic realm, the intriguing figure of Pontius Pilate becomes a central pivot in ongoing scholarly debates. The role he played in the crucifixion of Jesus, evidenced through historical documentation and archaeology, ignites fierce discussion among historians and theologians alike. Archaeological discoveries, such as the Pilate stone, an inscribed block of limestone describing Pontius Pilate as the prefect of Judea, have provided concrete evidence of his existence and governance. These findings disrupt any lingering doubts about Pilate being merely a fictional or exaggerated figure. They validate the New Testament accounts by anchoring them in tangible historical artifacts, which demand scholarly consideration and reinterpretation. This crucial piece of evidence serves as a veritable cornerstone upon which much academic debate builds. Historians now have a duty to re-examine ancient texts with newfound perspectives. Some researchers propose that these archaeological breakthroughs prompt a more nuanced understanding of Pilate not only as a historical figure but also as a participant in a complex socio-political and religious scenario. One branch of academic inquiry focuses on reconciling discrepancies among the Gospel accounts of Pilate's actions. The Gospel of Matthew presents him as a governor plagued by guilt, ceremoniously washing his hands to symbolize his claimed innocence. Conversely, the Gospel of John portrays him as a more assertive figure, seemingly convinced yet pressured into the decision by external forces. Scholars dissect these narratives, exploring the implications of each portrayal upon our understanding of Pilate's character. The inscription on the Pilate stone has also incited debates about the accuracy and authorial intentions behind the Gospel writer's depiction of Pilate. Was he a pragmatic leader navigating the treacherous waters of Roman politics and Jewish unrest? Or was he, as some traditional interpretations suggest, a fundamentally weak man who succumbed to fear rather than standing up for justice? Another heated debate among scholars pertains to the degree of Pilate's agency in Jesus' execution. Some argue that Pilate was a mere puppet manipulated by the Jewish Sanhedrin, while others assert that he wielded his authority with calculated indifference to maintain public order and curry favor with Rome. This dichotomy fuels ongoing research and diverse hypotheses. Furthermore, academia is rife with interpretations attempting to discern the theological implications of Pilate's actions. Augustine and Calvin offer insights that intertwine Pilate's decisions with divine sovereignty and human free will, prompting modern theologians to explore these themes through new lenses provided by archaeological finds. The academic discourse on Pilate is ever evolving, as each new discovery or reinterpretation beckons revised theories and deeper scrutiny. Scholars continually revisit the narrative, gleaning fresh insights while acknowledging the complexity of both historical and gospel accounts. As we ponder these academic debates, we must not lose sight of the broader context. The story of Pilate is not merely about one man's decision, but a vivid tapestry woven with threads of political, religious, and existential significance. Each scholarly argument adds a new dimension to our understanding, reminding us that history, much like faith, is an ever-unfolding journey of discovery. On that fateful morning in Jerusalem, as the sun began to climb over the ancient city, an unexpected event unfolded behind the closed doors of the governor's palace. The story of Pontius Pilate's wife, traditionally known as Procula, took a prominent place in the narrative of the crucifixion, though it often lingers in the shadows of history. This event is found in the Gospel according to Matthew, particularly in chapter 27, verse 19. While he, Pilate, was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much because of him today in a dream." This verse enshrines a brief but profound moment, where the divine intersects with human affairs through a dream, a whisper from the heavens piercing through the silence of slumber. Imagine for a moment Procula's distress, waking from such a dream. In those days, dreams were often seen as more than mere figments of the imagination. They were considered to carry messages, sometimes from the divine. Her command to Pilate, urgent and fervent, echoed the trembling voice of a soul touched by an otherworldly experience, imploring her husband to refrain from condemning Jesus, a man she recognized, even without having met, as righteous. The theological interpretations of Procula's dream have been manifold. Some see it as a divine warning, a heavenly attempt to prevent a grave injustice. It is a vignette that showcases the interplay between divine providence and human free will. Pilate, despite his wife's urgent plea, ultimately chose to heed the clamor of the crowd over the quiet warning of the divine dream delivered through his wife. Procula's dream holds a mirror to the conscience of humanity, reflecting the moments when truth and rightness flash before our eyes in unexpected ways, through ordinary means. It prompts us to consider how often we, like Pilate, are caught at the crossroads of decision, with internal and external forces vying for our adherence. In Christian tradition and beyond, this snippet of narrative has invited us to reflect on the ways in which the divine seeks to intervene in human affairs. It also inspires a deep introspection about the myriad warnings we receive in life, whether through dreams, conscience, or counsel, and how we respond to them. Procula's dream, while brief in its recording, retains a grandiose space in the theological landscape. It beckons believers to trust in the often subtle hints of divine intervention in our lives, and to consider seriously the repercussions of our choices when we brush aside such warnings. In the grand scheme of the Passion narrative, the voice of Procula echoes as a solemn reminder of the severity with which the divine message ought to be weighed. And thus, her dream is cherished not merely as a miraculous event, but as an enduring lesson on the gravity of divine guidance and human responsibility. Imagine, if you will, the ancient figure of Pontius Pilate standing at the intersection of history and eternity. His decision to sentence Jesus of Nazareth to crucifixion remains a moment of profound gravity, echoing through the corridors of time and significantly shaping the Christian faith. While it is easy to cast Pilate as merely a villain, a deeper examination reveals layers of significance that continue to influence contemporary Christian understanding. Firstly, Pilate's story serves as a powerful reminder of the complexities of justice. Pilate himself declared Jesus as innocent, but political pressure and fear of public uproar drove him to commit an act of judicial injustice. This scenario resonates deeply in modern discussions about justice systems worldwide, highlighting the potential conflicts between personal beliefs and external pressures. Christians today draw on Pilate's narrative to advocate for fairness and integrity within legal and social frameworks, urging for courage when facing moral dilemmas. Moving beyond the judiciary, the story of Pilate also speaks volumes about leadership. His inability to stand firm for what he acknowledged as just demonstrates the perils of weak leadership. Leaders, whether in spiritual, political, or social contexts, are constantly advised by Pilate's story to lead with conviction and moral clarity. When leaders yield to popular demand at the expense of righteousness, Pilate's example stands as a cautionary tale of consequence and regret. Equally compelling is the theme of accountability. Pilate's symbolic act of washing his hands in an attempt to absolve himself of responsibility has become a metaphor for shirking accountability. This act is often referenced in contemporary Christian teaching to illustrate that true accountability cannot be evaded. It challenges believers to confront and own their actions, pushing them to rise above the quest for social approval and instead embrace ethical steadfastness. Moreover, the theological implications of Pilate's actions are profound. His encounter with Jesus is a poignant juxtaposition of human authority and divine purpose. In his hands rested the life of a man who Christians believe was the Son of God, yet Pilate faltered in recognizing and acting upon the truth revealed before him. The faithful are thus reminded of the necessity to discern and act upon spiritual truths, even when they conflict with worldly expectations. The story of Pilate, unsurprisingly, has left an indelible mark on Christian liturgy and practice. Many traditions include readings and reflections on the Passion narrative, wherein Pilate's role is examined. This liturgical attention ensures that believers continually reflect on themes of justice, leadership, and accountability. It calls them to emulate Christ's perseverance in righteousness rather than Pilate's surrender to worldly pressures. In conclusion, the story of Pontius Pilate transcends its historical origins, offering timeless insights for contemporary faith and practice. Christians are challenged to seek justice without compromise, exercise leadership with moral courage, and uphold accountability with unwavering integrity. As they navigate their faith journeys, the shadow of Pilate's decision remains a stark reminder of the enduring call to righteousness in a complex world. As we turn our attention to the cultural representations of Pontius Pilate, we find that his figure looms large in the realms of art and literature. These portrayals have profoundly influenced the modern consciousness, shaping our understanding of Pilate not merely as a historical figure but as a symbol of moral ambivalence. In the realm of visual arts, the image of Pilate has been etched into our collective memory through numerous paintings. Consider, for instance, the works of famous artists like Tintoretto and Caravaggio. In Tintoretto's Christ Before Pilate, the artist captures the tension and drama of the trial, with Pilate often depicted as a weary, conflicted man, struggling under the weight of his decision. Such depictions underscore Pilate's internal conflict and lend a human dimension to his story, reminding viewers that he too was caught in the throes of a profound moral dilemma. Caravaggio's The Crowning with Thorns offers another perspective, focusing on the moment when Jesus is presented to Pilate. Here, Pilate's figure is often overshadowed by the brutality inflicted upon Jesus, which can evoke in the observer a sense of Pilate's helplessness or detachment. This portrayal can compel us to reflect on the ways in which authority figures can become complicit in injustice through inaction or indifference. Moving to the literary landscape, Pilate's character is prominent in the works of writers who have grappled with themes of justice, guilt, and redemption. In Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, Pilate does not appear directly, but his presence is felt in the figure of the cowardly, whose neutrality in life earned them a place in the antechamber of hell. Dante's work serves as a moral allegory, with Pilate symbolizing the perils of moral indecision and the abdication of responsibility, the ultimate critique of his washing of hands. Fyodor Dostoevsky, in his novel, The Brothers Karamazov, employs Pilate in Ivan Karamazov's philosophical musings. Here, Pilate's question, "What is truth?" becomes a pivotal point in a broader existential contemplation about faith, doubt, and the human condition. Dostoevsky uses Pilate to exemplify the eternal struggle between skepticism and belief, highlighting how Pilate's dilemma transcends its historical roots to address universal questions about moral and spiritual responsibilities. These artistic and literary depictions have not only kept Pilate's story alive but have also enriched its interpretation, providing layers of meaning that speak to different generations and diverse cultural contexts. Whether through the visceral immediacy of visual art or the introspective depth of literature, Pilate's character continues to evoke complex reflections on authority, conscience, and the human propensity for moral compromise. Through these cultural representations, Pilate is seen not merely as the historical Roman governor who authorized Jesus' crucifixion, but as a mirror reflecting our own ethical struggles and societal dilemmas. His story, retold and reimagined, serves as a reminder of the enduring significance of moral courage and the dangers inherent in the abdication of moral responsibility. In closing, let us take a moment to recap the key points we have explored about the enigmatic figure of Pontius Pilate and his pivotal role in the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. As we have journeyed through the annals of history and delved into the sacred scriptures, we have observed how Pilate's actions are steeped in a blend of historical realism and theological weight. Historically, Pilate stands as a Roman governor navigating the treacherous political landscape of Judea. His decision to allow Jesus to be crucified is shrouded in the political pressures and societal tumult of the time. It highlights the often murky interplay between political expediency and moral duty, wherein Pilate, perhaps seeking to avert greater chaos, succumbs to the demands of the masses. Theologically, Pilate's role is both profound and tragic. It encapsulates the complex intersect of justice and mercy, guilt and redemption. Pilate's act of washing his hands, as recorded in the Gospel of Matthew, symbolizes an attempt to absolve himself of the responsibility, yet it also underscores the inescapability of moral accountability. This act, while outwardly indicating his sense of helplessness, inwardly reflects the human struggle with conscience and the painful awareness of falling short of moral rectitude. As we reflect on Pilate's story, we glean enduring lessons that resonate through the ages. His narrative serves as a stark reminder that justice is not solely the remit of the powerful but a universal call to all individuals. It challenges us to think deeply about our own responses to moral dilemmas and the ease with which we might seek to absolve ourselves from the weight of difficult decisions. Pilate's story also invites us to consider the nature of redemption. Even in the face of profound moral failure, there is the ever-present possibility of redemption, a core tenet of Christian faith. It is through the lens of Pilate's hesitancy and ultimate capitulation that we are reminded of the grace available to us through Jesus Christ, who faced the ultimate injustice to bring redemption to humanity. We encourage you to ponder how these timeless themes of justice, moral conflict, and redemption play out in your own life. How do you navigate the pressures and demands that challenge your principles? What steps do you take to align your actions with a sense of justice? As you reflect on these questions, we invite you to engage with our content further. By subscribing, liking, and commenting, you not only stay connected but also join a larger community striving to understand and live out these profound truths in the modern world. Heavenly Father, we come before you today reflecting on the story of Pontius Pilate, a man caught in a moment of profound moral dilemma. We ask for your guidance in moments of our own confusion and conflict. Grant us the wisdom to make just decisions and the courage to stand by our convictions, even when faced with adversity. May we learn from Pilate's story the value of righteousness and the importance of mercy. We pray for forgiveness for our own failings and for the strength to act with integrity in all aspects of our lives. Through Jesus Christ, who faced the ultimate injustice to bring us redemption. Amen.